The Retirement Cafe Podcast, episode 99, making your voice heard at the end of life.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe Podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe Podcast. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, you will know that it's sponsored by My Financial Planner. Not knowing when you can afford to retire or what your pensions will provide can be worrying. My Financial Planner provides independent, fixed fee retirement planning advice, bringing clarity to your financial future. At My Financial Planner, we build a financial plan for your retirement and equip you with the knowledge to implement the plan and buy any products you need yourself. Find out more about getting a plan to fund the retirement you really want at myfinancialplanner.co.uk. Next week will be our 100th episode, so I wanted to mark this exciting milestone with a very special guest. Be sure to subscribe either on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk or on your preferred podcast player so you don't miss my conversation with global best-selling author Professor Andrew Scott. Professor Scott co-wrote The 100-Year Life and more recently The New Long Life and joins me to discuss how we need to adapt to ensure living to 100 is a gift and not a curse. In today's episode, we are revisiting a topic that I know many listeners are concerned about, and that's making sure your voice is heard and understood at the end of life, even when you lose capacity to do so yourself. Many things are outside of our control when it comes to how and when we finally shuffle off this mortal coil, but there are ways in which we can at least make our wishes known. Sarah Malik is a specialist information and support nurse with the charity Compassion in Dying. In our conversation, she explains the key documents you should put in place and how their charity can help. Here's my conversation with Sarah. So welcome to the Retirement Cafe Podcast, Sarah Malik.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Well, I've been really looking forward to chatting with you, Sarah, and we haven't met before. But so now I understand you're a specialist information and support nurse at Compassion in Dying. Now, I've got two big questions. The first one is, who are Compassion in Dying? And I'll save my second question for a moment's time. So tell me a bit about who Compassion in Dying are.
Well, Compassion in Dying is a national charity, and we support people to plan ahead for their end of life, and an end of life that's right for them. So we're a patients' rights charity. We support people to know more about what their rights are and learn about how they can really feel empowered to plan in a way that really is in line with their values and their beliefs.
Gosh. And have you been around, has the organisation been around a long time?
Yeah, we've been around a while, but we're really, I think, moving into the mainline charity sector. People are hearing a lot more about us, especially recently. A lot more people are really trying to plan ahead. I think people are thinking a lot more and have a lot more time on their hands to think about these difficult questions. You know, what would I want towards the end of life? What's important to me?
So, Sarah, tell me about your background. So you're a specialist information and support nurse. Were you involved in this type of care, or how have you ended up at Compassion in Dying?
Oh, lovely question. So I have been, my background is nursing. I trained at Guy's and St Thomas's and always worked in oncology and haematology and end-of-life care. It was an area of nursing I was really passionate about and really enjoyed, but it soon became quite apparent that it wasn't really compatible with young children.
Right.
The hours and the overtime were just too tricky to balance, unfortunately. So about 10 years ago, I started working at Prostate Cancer UK, which is another big charity based in London, which was wonderful. And they have a big team of specialist nurses there. And then about 3.5 years ago, I made the move over to Compassion in Dying, who wanted to have a nurse on their information line. So I went from being one of a very big team of nurses to the only nurse.
Wow.
But it's been a really, really fascinating journey, and that sidestep from NHS and clinical nursing, which to many probably at the time, all my colleagues, seemed like a really strange move. But actually, it's made me a far better nurse. It's fascinating how much you can learn when you step away from the clinical care and focus only on communication and really responding to what people are saying to you.
So what does your role actually involve now then? I mean, you mentioned a helpline, etc. This is a helpline available to everybody?
Yeah, it's a free helpline which people can call. With slightly reduced hours at the moment whilst we're having these difficult times, but normally it's open from 9 to 5, at the moment 11 till 3. And there's a team of us, I'm the only nurse there, and we support people with their end-of-life planning. But we have a huge range of callers. But for those who don't want to call, people also email us. But it's not face-to-face support, it's all either email or on the phone.
Yeah. So could you give me an example of maybe maybe someone who would call, what type of things that they were facing, what kind of questions that they've got, give them a few examples.
Absolutely. So I actually spoke to someone last week who called to say that they had an elderly parent in hospital,
right,
and they didn't agree with what the hospital or the clinical team were proposing to do.
Wow.
And sadly, this is where he and many others in the same situation learnt that unless there's formal planning in place, family members or next of kin just don't have that decision-making authority like so many assume. So he called us to find out what he could do, which sadly was very little apart from to really communicate to the clinical team what it was he feels was in his mother's best interest. But at the same time, as a man in his 60s, he decided that actually, I don't want this to happen to me. I now know that in order for me to retain control towards the end of life and make sure that the care I want is delivered towards the end of life, he actually got involved with us and, asked for an advance decision and got his own planning in place. So we supported him in a very twofold way. In one way, helping him to try and communicate as best he could with the clinical team about what he thought was in his mother's best interest, although he had no legal authority to make decisions. But at the same time, we sort of taught him or supported him to understand what he could do for himself.
So what in that circumstances, what did he decide to do for himself?
He decided to do everything.
Right.
So he wanted to go belt and braces. So he completed an advance decision to refuse treatment form, which is a form where you record any medical treatments that you do not want to be given in the future. Just in case you can't actually make a decision for yourself at that point. So he recorded all the treatments he decided he didn't want to have if that situation were to occur where he couldn't say. And he also decided to make his 2 adult children his power of attorney for health and welfare. So we talked through the process, how those documents can work together, because they can, what was required. He was under the false impression that actually a solicitor was required for both those documents, which they aren't. Some people choose to involve them, but it's absolutely not necessary. And all that support we provided for free, which was great.
Wow. And so just digging into this a little bit deeper. So he made some choices about the treatment that he didn't want to receive. Tell me kind of the examples of what that might be. And then also, how do you that seems an amazingly difficult thing to pre-plan.
Yeah. So we actually provide a form which is a template. So right. I've touched on already that we shouldn't actually have a one-size-fits-all approach to care and treatment. But our form does have a template which you can choose to include. And his mother had dementia. So he had been opened up to the world of dementia and the sorts of things that can go wrong with that condition as it progresses. So the issue with his mother was that they were proposing to insert some clinically assisted nutrition.
Right.
Which means that she needed to be tube fed because as the condition progresses, quite often people lose the ability to swallow. It becomes unsafe to swallow food and they move towards clinically assisted nutrition, this tube feeding. So he actually decided that if he were to ever have dementia, he doesn't want to have his life prolonged because he saw his mother having no quality of life. So for him, it was very important to make sure that if he ever has dementia, and it progresses to the point where he can't make decisions, that he's refusing all life-sustaining treatment, but that's focusing sort of very significantly on those things that are likely to come up with dementia. So antibiotics for life-threatening infections and clinically assisted nutrition.
Wow. Great. No, really, that's really interesting because, I was just wondering how it actually works specifically. That's a great example. And then you touched on also that he has appointed some attorneys, and were they going to be, party to this to all these documents?
Absolutely. It's no help for attorneys to find these things as a surprise. They need to be very, very or fully clued up on exactly what it is you do and do not want. So attorneys need to be people that you really trust to make decisions for you in line with what you would have wanted and what you would have chosen. So having an advanced decision as well would allow them to know exactly what it is that he wants, and also to make sure that he is never treated with anything that he doesn't want to be treated with. It gives them that authority. They don't have to sit back and think, oh well, there's nothing we can do. Actually, they can say no. He's outlined in a legally binding document that he doesn't want these treatments. And then if anything else comes up that they think he wouldn't want, that's not outlined in the advance decision, they then have that authority to go ahead and make those decisions.
Wow. Really, really, it's so important for people to consider this.
It really is.
Yeah. There is another document, I think. There's an advanced statement as well. What's the difference between the advanced statement and the advanced decision?
The advanced statement isn't legally binding, but it's a really helpful document because it allows you to outline anything that's important to you in relation to your health and your values and your well-being. So this document can help clinicians look after you better.
Right.
So some people might write, I'd rather be cared for in a hospice than in a busy hospital setting. You can't ensure that's 100% seen through, but at least if you know that's what they would have preferred, you can try to make that happen. They might say that I've been a vegetarian for 20 years. So if I lose the ability to tell you what it is I do or do not want, at least then that's there for you, along with perhaps if they're religious or if they have no religion, you would know that about them. And these are really important things that really add further context to what someone may have written in an advanced decision if they've done that too. So yeah, a really, really powerful document and really, really helpful for clinicians too. And in fact, I think it's really important to sort of focus on that. Whilst this is empowering people to be independent, it's also really helpful, we know, for clinicians to know what someone wants. Yeah.
And so when you were nursing, did you see these documents or were they just not very common?
Not nearly enough.
Right.
And I don't think I would have understood sufficiently back then because it's not focused on enough. Well, it wasn't before in your training, and you don't see it enough when you're on the wards. And that's something we know is largely down to the fact that people think their family will have an automatic authority and right to make decisions for you.
Yeah.
But whether you've married 50 years or you've been looking after your parents for a number of years at home, no one has that authority, sadly.
No. Now, I presume you've got these documents sorted out.
Not power of attorney, no, but I do have an advanced decision, yeah.
Yeah, well, power of attorney is probably a good idea as well, isn't it?
Well, you've got to have the right person to trust, haven't you? That's a tricky one.
Well, it is, and you're rightly so. If you haven't got that person, then the Office of Public Guardian will pick up the pieces for you, I suppose, isn't it? So there is a backstop for arrangement for people who haven't got the power of attorney sorted out. And do you you're obviously much younger than I am. Do you kind of impress on your friends and your neighbours to get these documents done?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point to make. And I do. I'm quite boring, and I do talk about this a lot with my friends and my family, because this isn't about age. I mean, from the age of 18 upwards, you can make an advanced decision. But too often you'll hear from people, well, I haven't got a diagnosis, or I'm not dying, or I'm really fit and well. And it's not about that. Things can change, sadly, in a heartbeat. And if you do have strong feelings about what you want, and crucially, what you do not want, then it's so important to have it written down. And so if people are concerned, they should always call us at Compassion in Dying, because we'll explain all of that for free. But some of my friends cycling in London, I mean, they are my sort of target audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, for someone who at 30 years of age got knocked off his motorbike and ended up in intensive care for 10 days in Belgium, then I know exactly. Yeah, luckily I didn't have any, directions needed for that, and the healthcare treatment I got was fantastic, which is
good.
How I'm here today. So,
That's good to hear.
Thank you. There are a number of guides I think you have available on your website, which are to help people kind of understand much more about this. Can you just kind of give us a bit of a steer on what people should look for and what people should possibly download?
On the website, yeah. Well, it's not for everyone to go online. So I think it's really important that people know that that's not a prohibitive thing. If people would rather call, we can post these documents, and I'm very happy to do that. So I just really want to make that clear, that you do not have to do all of this online. It's not for everyone. But if you are happy online, then there is the mydecisions.org tool. And that's an account that you can create and then complete this form. No one else has access to that. It's private to you, who's the person completing it. And that's one way of completing an advanced decision. You can print it. Once it's signed and witnessed, you can make photocopies of it. They're as legally binding as the original. And they can be circulated widely. So to your GP, your friends and family, any health and welfare attorneys you have, keeping a copy at home, any consultants you're under the care of, it needs to be widely shared to make it so that if it's ever needed, it can be found. We also provide a card for your wallet, so that if you're ever kind of attended to by first responders, if they look through your belongings and see to find out who you are, that is, they see this card, they'll find where they could, the details of 2 places they can get a copy of this form. So there's lots of ways of sharing the document. But the My Decisions tool is a great way of completing it. But you can also download it from the website and complete it. And if you can't write, or you have problems with completing forms, then it's okay to ask someone else to complete it for you in terms of handwriting, as long as they're writing in the form what you want to be written in the form. And they mustn't act as your witness if they've been the scribe for you. So there's many different options depending on what works for you. And I think that's really important that people realise. If you'd rather type the form, then there's the option to do that. If you want to handwrite the form, you can do that too.
Yeah, brilliant. And we will put all the links on our show notes from the Retirement Cafe website to all those guides and information that you just mentioned.
Brilliant.
So, Sarah, some of us may have relatives, people close to us, who haven't got these documents in place. And I think this could be quite a tricky conversation. Have you got any words of wisdom how you approach maybe mum and dad, or, and say, we should get a, living will or advanced direction, or, how would you go about this?
I think that's a great question. And I've experienced for myself personally how hard it is to actually have those conversations for yourself with my own grandparents. So I think it's a really, really good question. And I would say that despite doing this every day on the phone professionally, I can't say enough how I appreciate how hard it is. It's not an easy conversation. I would suggest bit by bit. You don't have to go the whole hog straight away and cover everything. Starting gently with just a sort of relaxed conversation. Have you thought about what it is that you would or wouldn't want if things change or in the future? You could even say, I've decided that this is what I wouldn't want or what I do want. So how do you feel? Do you agree? Have you got your own views on this? If you were to become unwell, is there someone you would like to speak for you, or would you rather be in control of that for yourself? I can help you sort of gauge which documents or perhaps both are right for your family member. Quite often, being in neutral territory, not being in one or the other's homes, can help, but that really depends on circumstances, I suppose. But it is hard, and that's why really we've produced this document called Starting the Conversation, and we can send that to you for free or attach it to an email. And I think that would be really helpful for anyone approaching these difficult conversations.
Great. Wise advice. Well, Sarah, it's been fascinating talking to you today. I thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule with young children and the great work that you're doing. And I will put all the links that you've mentioned today in the show notes. And is there anything that I've missed asking you about? Is there anything I've forgotten to talk about?
Just that there's a huge amount of really important detailed information on our website, but if going online isn't for you, then feel free to call us on our information line service 0800 999 2434. We're always really happy to talk through your concerns about your wishes towards the end of life, and we're really passionate about supporting people's choices. So please do get in touch if you have any questions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Sarah, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for having me.
Once again, thank you to Sarah Malik for taking the time to talk with me. To find out more about the work Compassion in Dying does, or to download the guides or complete the forms yourself, check out the show notes on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll also find some useful links. If you've not done so already, you can subscribe to the podcast to never miss an episode on our website or on your preferred podcast player. And if you've enjoyed this episode, you can write a review on Apple Podcasts. I'd be most grateful. Thank you, as always, to my financial planner, the Fixed Fee Retirement Planning Specialist, for sponsoring the podcast. You can find out more about how they can help bring clarity to your retirement at myfinancialplanner.co.uk. So until next time, this is Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Cafe podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.